Welcome to the Risk Wheelhouse, the podcast where we navigate the ever-changing seas of risk management and technology. Join your hosts, Ori Wellington and Sam Jones, as they steer you through the latest trends, insights, and strategies shaping the future of integrated risk management. Ready to chart a course towards success? Hop aboard and let's set sail into today's deep dive.
Picture this. You're sitting at your desk. Maybe it's late on a Tuesday afternoon. Your coffee is entirely cold by now.
Oh, we've all been there.
Right. And you've got this glossy, beautifully designed vendor pitch deck sitting right in front of you.
Yeah.
And the words jumping off the page, practically in neon lights, right, are autonomous AI.
The magic words.
Exactly. It's this promise that all your compliance headaches, all your risk management bottlenecks, they're just going to magically disappear because the software is going to handle it all by itself.
Yeah, just push a button and go home early.
Right, which sounds amazing. But you're sitting there wondering, is this actually real? Or is this just like the absolute peak of marketing hype?
Which is a very fair question to ask these days.
It is. And the answer, according to this really scathing new 50-page breakdown from Wheelhouse Advisors, is basically hiding in plain sight. So today, for our deep dive, we're looking at Optro's acquisition of a company called Midship.
A huge deal in the tech space.
Massive. And we are going to tear apart this June 30th, 2026 report. It's titled IRM 50 on Watch, where Optro's AI claims hit the mark and where they fall short. Authored by Ori Wellington.
Yeah, and this is just, it is a critical document for anyone spending money in enterprise tech right now. Because in the world of governance, risk, and compliance, which, we usually just call GRC words, have incredible weight.
They really do. It's not just marketing fluff.
Exactly. The word autonomous isn't just some fun buzzword you can slap on an airport billboard. I mean, from an architectural standpoint, it's a very specific binding assertion.
Right.
When a vendor says they are autonomous, they are making this massive claim about where their software lives in your tech stack. And more importantly, what it's actually permitted to do without human supervision.
And I really want to get into the weeds of what that actually means, because I feel like every vendor on the planet right now is claiming they have an autonomous AI.
Oh, absolutely. It's an epidemic.
Right. But before we judge Optro's specific claims about Midship, we need a map. So the Wheelhouse report uses this framework called the IRM Navigator Model, IRM standing for Integrated Risk Management.
Correct.
So how does this model actually map out where software lives in a modern enterprise? Because, if I'm a buyer, I need to know what I'm actually looking at.
Yeah, so the IRM Navigator Model is essentially this blueprint of corporate reality. It cuts through all the marketing jargon and divides all enterprise software into three distinct layers or systems.
3 layers.
Right. So the foundational layer, the bedrock of everything, is the system of record.
It's basically just a giant filing cabinet, right?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It is the storage layer. So this is where your corporate controls, your company policies, your historical evidence, employee records, it all just lives here.
Just a big database.
Exactly. It's a database. It doesn't do anything on its own. It just remembers what you tell it to remember. If we want to use a restaurant analogy, the system of record is your pantry inventory.
Okay, I like that.
It's the clipboard in the back office that says you have exactly 12 cans of crushed tomatoes, 50 pounds of flour, and 3 gallons of olive oil.
Essential, obviously, because you absolutely cannot run a restaurant without knowing what you have in the back room.
Right. You go out of business.
But a clipboard has never cooked a meal. Just sits there.
It is entirely static. So to get anything done, you have to move one level up.
Okay.
Which brings us to the system of engagement.
Okay, so now we're talking about the layer where people actually interact with the data.
Correct. This is where workflow and collaboration happen. It's the routing of information. The system of engagement takes that static data from the system of record and pushes it to the right people at exactly the right time.
Like notifications and stuff.
Yeah, it sends the automated alerts. It populates those dashboards you stare at every morning. It manages the approval chains. I mean, it is dynamic, but it is fundamentally built around human action.
So bringing it back to our restaurant, the system of engagement is the wait staff walking around with those little digital tablets.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
So they take the order, punch it in, and it instantly pops up on a digital screen in the kitchen so the line cooks know what to make.
Exactly. It coordinates the whole process.
Yeah, make sure the head chef knows table 4 wants the steak medium rare. And it might even flash red on the manager's screen if a table has been waiting more than 20 minutes for their appetizers.
That is a perfect visualization. The system is coordinating the humans. It is making the humans vastly more efficient, reducing errors, speeding up communication.
Right.
But, and this is key, the system itself isn't cooking the steak. The human cook still has to look at the screen, grab the tongs, and physically put the meat on the grill.
Which honestly feels like where 99% of enterprise software actually lives today. It's just really fancy waitstaff tablets.
You aren't wrong. I mean, most modern SaaS platforms are just incredibly sophisticated systems of engagement. But that brings us to the Holy Grail. The absolute apex of this model, which is what everyone is currently chasing, the system of action.
The autonomous layer.
Yes. This is where a system detects a condition, makes a decision, acts on that decision, and then verifies the result. And it does all of that with diminishing or even zero human intervention.
Wow.
Yeah, it is what enterprise architects call the closed loop. It doesn't just alert a human that something is wrong, it fixes the problem itself and then logs that the fix was successful.
So in the restaurant, a system of action is a fully automated robotic chef.
Precisely.
It has digital sensors in the pantry, so it detects that those 12 cans of crushed tomatoes are down to 2. It decides that 2 is below the minimum threshold for a Friday night.
It's doing the math.
Right. Then it acts by automatically placing an electronic purchase order with your supplier. Then, when the delivery truck arrives, it verifies the new inventory.
Without anyone telling it to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, out in the dining room, it's taking orders directly from the customer's phones, cooking the meals perfectly, and putting them on the pass, all without a single human involved.
It is a monumental leap. I mean, going from the waitstaff tablet to the robotic chef isn't just an upgrade. It is a fundamental re-architecture of how work gets done.
It's a totally different paradigm.
It really is. And this is where we need to pause and really explore the reality of corporate IT. Because in enterprise risk management, getting to that system of action closing that loop is incredibly difficult. It is not just a matter of writing a clever new algorithm.
I want to challenge that a bit, though, because, I mean, on the surface, we see AI doing miraculous things every single day, right?
We do.
We have cars that can navigate busy city streets on their own. We have AI generating photorealistic videos from a text prompt. If a neural network can beat a grandmaster at chess, why is closing the loop in corporate compliance such a massive technological hurdle?
It's a very common question.
Like, if a server has an error, shouldn't the AI just be able to fix it? Why is human intervention still so heavily required?
It comes down to the fundamental nature of risk and compliance in a complex organization. Think about what we are actually governing here. We aren't talking about optimizing a supply chain delivery route where the variables are simple physics distance, traffic, fuel costs.
Right, that's just math.
Exactly. We are talking about the operational, financial, and legal boundaries of a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
Okay, walk me through a granular scenario. Like, paint a picture of what this actually looks like on a Tuesday afternoon for a security engineer.
Sure. Let's say an enterprise piece of software, an AI monitor, detects a vulnerability in a critical server. Specifically, let's say it finds a misconfigured firewall port that has been left open.
Okay, which is bad.
Very bad. It violates a core corporate compliance policy and exposes the company to a cyber attack. A system of engagement does its job perfectly here. It flags the anomaly, creates a high-priority JIRA ticket, slaps a big red warning on the Chief Information Security Officer's dashboard, and maybe pings the on-call security team on Slack.
Right. It yells, "Hey, humans, there is a fire in the server room. Go put it out."
Precisely. Now imagine a vendor claims they have sold you a true system of action. It detects that exact same misconfigured open port. It decides, based on the compliance policy it was trained on, that the port needs to be closed immediately to prevent a breach.
Makes sense.
Then it acts by autonomously rewriting the firewall rules and shutting down the port.
Sounds fantastic. You just saved the company from a potential hack in milliseconds. The CISO didn't even have to put down their coffee.
Except there is a reason that port was open. By autonomously closing it, the AI just severed the connection to the company's legacy payment processing gateway.
Oh, no.
The company can no longer process credit cards. Zero revenue is flowing in. By autonomously remediating a compliance risk, the AI just caused a catastrophic operational outage across the entire global business.
Well, okay, so the AI fixed the compliance rule but entirely broke the business.
Exactly. The variables in enterprise risk are highly contextual, incredibly interdependent, and very often completely undocumented.
Just tribal knowledge.
Right. A human security engineer looks at that open port, sees the alert from the system of engagement and says, wait, why is port 8080 open on that specific machine? Oh, right. The old billing system from the 2018 acquisition still needs it to communicate until we finish the server migration next quarter?
They have the context.
They do. They know they can't just shut it down. They might implement a temporary compensating control instead, maybe put a secondary monitor on it, rather than just severing the connection entirely.
So the AI lacks the institutional context. It read the rule book, but it doesn't know the unwritten rules. It doesn't understand the delicate, messy balance between perfect security and actually keeping the business running so people can get paid.
And that is just the operational side of the house. We haven't even touched the legal and regulatory side, which is arguably where the real terror lives for executives.
Oh, I can only imagine.
In GRC, if a system makes an autonomous decision to alter financial reporting controls, or change user access privileges to highly sensitive data, or rewrite a compliance document that goes to federal regulators, who's liable if it gets it wrong?
I would assume the company is.
Yeah.
Or does the vendor take the hit?
The enterprise takes the hit. Regulators like the SEC or the FTC, they do not accept the AI did it as an excuse for a compliance breach or a financial misstatement.
Yeah, that wouldn't hold up in court.
Not at all, because the stakes are massive regulatory fines, operational outages, or severe legal liabilities. Organizations inherently design these systems to require a human hand on the steering wheel.
So corporate paranoia is actually a feature, not a bug.
In many ways, yes. You want the system to gather all the evidence, prepare the fix, draft the new firewall rule, write the compliance report, and then present it all neatly to a highly paid human who reviews it, considers the context, and manually clicks approve.
Which means getting to a true system of action isn't just a technology problem. It's a trust problem.
A massive one.
It's a liability nightmare. It's the very real fear that your robotic chef
Might decide the absolute fastest, most efficient way to cook a steak is to just set the entire kitchen on fire.
Are you ready to see risk management in action? At Wheelhouse Advisors, we've launched a new YouTube channel dedicated to integrated risk management. You'll find quick explainers, insights from our IRM Navigator research reports, highlights from the Risk Journal, and conversations from the Risk Wheelhouse podcast. We're covering the topics that matter most to executives and risk leaders, from AI governance and cyber insurance to operational resilience and regulatory change. Every video is designed to help you anticipate risks, adapt with confidence, and build resilience in a digital-first world. In our first video, we explain how ISO 42001, the EU AI Act, and the NIST AI Risk Management Framework can work together as a unified playbook for AI risk. Subscribe today at youtube.com/@wheelhouseadv and get the latest insights delivered directly to you. That's youtube.com/@wheelhouseadv. Subscribe now and stay ahead of the risks that matter most.
That is a phenomenal way to summarize it. To build a true system of action in GRC, the AI doesn't just need to be smart enough to detect a problem. It needs to be contextually aware enough to understand the cascading consequences of its actions across an incredibly fragile enterprise architecture.
Yeah.
And it needs to be reliable enough that the general counsel and the CEO are literally willing to stake their personal legal liability and the company's compliance certification on its unsupervised actions.
That is terrifying.
It is. That is why the system of action is such a massive leap,
Yeah.
and why claims of autonomy must be scrutinized so heavily.
You know, that context really changes how I look at everything here. It perfectly sets the stage for looking at Optro and this Wheelhouse report. Because you'd think, given all that, Wheelhouse would just come out swinging and bash Optro right out of the gate.
Right. But they don't. They actually start the report by giving Optro a ton of credit for a very real, very impressive achievement. They establish a baseline of what Optro is genuinely getting right before we get into the controversial stuff.
They do, and it's a vital distinction because it shows the analysts are being objective. The report references an earlier note they published, the May 13th RTJ Bridge note, which evaluated Optro's integration of a new capability called Fair Now.
Right.
And the verdict on Fair Now was highly positive.
Yeah, they state point blank that the Fair Now integration is highly successful. So for the buyer listening to this, what exactly is Fair Now doing that earned that kind of praise from a famously skeptical analyst firm?
Fair Now delivers genuine, highly effective AI governance capabilities within the traditional GRC scope. Specifically, it gives organizations a comprehensive AI inventory.
Wait, pause on AI inventory. What does that actually mean in practice?
While in a modern enterprise, you have marketing teams using unauthorized AI to write copy.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
You have developers spinning up large language models to check code, HR experimenting with AI screening tools. It is the Wild West. FairNow goes out, scans the enterprise environment, and catalogs exactly where AI is being used, what data it is touching, and what models are actually running. It creates a centralized ledger.
Okay, that sounds incredibly useful just for maintaining sanity. What else does it do?
It handles deep risk assessments for those AI models. It can look at a model and flag if it is trained on biased data or if it poses a privacy risk. Furthermore, it automates the generation of audit artifacts.
Audit artifacts. Let's translate that out of analyst speak.
Fair enough. Think of an audit artifact as the proof you hand over to an auditor to show you are following the law.
Okay.
Historically, a human analyst would spend days taking screenshots of dashboards, downloading CSV files, formatting them into a Word document, and writing a narrative explaining how a control was met.
Sounds miserable.
It is. FairNow automates that entire process. It gathers the disparate data, formats it perfectly to meet specific regulatory standards like the EU AI Act or local privacy laws, and generates the final document. It also tracks third-party AI risk, meaning it monitors the AI tools your vendors are using.
Okay, let me play the role of the confused, slightly overwhelmed buyer here for a second.
Go for it.
If FairNow is doing all these incredibly complex things, if it's inventorying rogue AI across a global company, running complex bias risk assessments, and automatically generating final audit documents that used to take humans weeks to build, why on earth isn't that considered autonomous?
It's a great question.
Like, what is holding that back from being the robotic chef we just talked about? Because it sounds pretty autonomous to me.
And that is exactly the logical leap that vendors hope you make, and it is the exact question buyers must ask to protect themselves. The difference comes down to the specific domain the software operates in and the final step of the process. FairNow operates entirely within what Wheelhouse defines as the policy domain.
The policy domain, meaning it deals with rules and paperwork.
Exactly. It is looking at rules, documentation, assessments, and reporting. When it generates an audit artifact, it is doing a tremendous amount of heavy lifting, yes.
Right.
It is gathering data, parsing it, cross-referencing it against complex legal regulations, and formatting it. It is saving human compliance teams thousands of hours of manual, soul-crushing labor.
But I hear a but coming.
But it is still operating as a bridge. It is moving from the system of engagement, the workflow, and the alerts toward the system of action, but it deliberately stops just short of acting. Wheelhouse calls this specific architectural state agentic GRC.
Agentic GRC. Okay, define agentic for me in this context.
Yep.
How is an agent different from an autonomous system?
An agentic system has agency to perform complex, multi-step tasks to achieve a specific bounded goal. It can string together a series of actions, but it is ultimately a coordinator. It is a highly intelligent assistant.
Like a superpowered intern.
Exactly. To use our firewall analogy from earlier, an agentic system doesn't just flag the open port and create a JIRA ticket. It investigates the port. It drafts a comprehensive report on why it's a SOC2 violation. It writes the exact command line code needed to safely close the port.
Wow, okay.
And then it puts a neat, perfectly wrapped package on the security engineer's desk saying, here is the problem, here is the full operational context, and here is the exact solution ready to execute. Please click Approve to deploy.
I see. It tees everything up. A bridge carries traffic toward a destination, but it isn't the destination itself. It coordinates toward action, it prepares the fix flawlessly, but it absolutely refuses to pull the trigger on its own.
Precisely. It structurally requires that human handoff to close the loop. And here is where Optro originally got it incredibly right. Their product and engineering teams correctly and responsibly labeled this FairNow capability agentic GRC.
They were on.
Very. They didn't overpromise. They recognized they had built a phenomenal market-leading bridge, and they sold it to their customers as a bridge. On this specific front, the AI story absolutely hits the mark. The architecture matches the marketing claim perfectly.
And honestly, if the story ended right there, this would be a very short, very boring deep dive. We'd all just applaud Optro and go home.
But it doesn't end there.
No, it doesn't. Because here's where it gets really interesting. The product team was disciplined with their language. The engineers knew what they built, but then executive marketing gets involved. And when do corporate marketing teams ever let a perfectly accurate, scientifically disciplined term like agentic GRC get in the way of a massive press cycle?
Rarely, if ever. And that dynamic brings us to a very specific date, May 6, 2026. This is the inflection point of the entire Wheelhouse report. On this day, Optro announces it is acquiring a company called Midship.
Right, the Midship acquisition.
The stated goal of this acquisition is to add autonomous SOX testing to the Optro product line.
Let's do a quick detour for those who might not be deep in the financial compliance weeds. SOX is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, right?
Correct. It is a federal law passed in 2002.
Right, in response to the massive accounting scandals like Enron, WorldCom, where companies were essentially hiding massive debts and lying to investors.
A dark time for corporate accounting.
Yeah, so SOX was brought in to force corporate executives to personally guarantee that their financial reporting is accurate. So SOX testing is the incredibly tedious, highly scrutinized process of verifying every single financial control in a company to ensure there is zero corporate fraud.
Yes. And because the penalties for a SOX violation include actual prison time for executives, the testing process is heavily documented, incredibly rigid, and highly repetitive.
So nobody wants to do it.
No one wants to do it. Auditors have to check sample after sample of financial transactions, access logs, and approval chains. It requires an army of accountants and compliance officers. It is a prime, highly lucrative target for software automation.
Makes total sense. So Optro buys Midship to automate this painful SOX process. And this is where we have to zero in on Chief Executive Raul Villar Jr. He publishes a signed blog post announcing the Midship acquisition to the world. And the title of this post is Building the Industry's First Autonomous System for GRC.
And right there, with that single headline, the vocabulary shifts, and the core tension of this report is established.
Just from one word.
From one word. By claiming an autonomous system, the CEO is explicitly claiming that Optro has achieved the system of action. They are claiming they have successfully closed the loop. They are telling the market, we are no longer just a bridge. We are the destination.
I want to make sure I understand the gravity of this. If I'm reading that blog post as a chief risk officer, I'm thinking, great, the robotic chef is finally here. I can fire half my auditors because the system will just test the controls, fix the errors, and sign the documents. Is it really that big of a leap from agentic?
It is an architectural chasm. By using the word autonomous, the CEO has raised the bar for Optro to the absolute highest architectural standard in enterprise technology. As Wheelhouse states so clearly in their analysis, you don't resolve this tension by assertion. A CEO cannot simply decree that a system is autonomous.
Right. You can't just speak it into existence.
Exactly. You resolve it by diligence. You have to prove it empirically.
You have to show the receipts.
Exactly. The entirety of this Wheelhouse report and the crux of our deep dive today hinges on this exact tension. It is the clash between what the architecture of agentic GRC is structurally capable of doing versus what the CEO's marketing engine claims it is currently doing.
I love this. It's time to put on our detective hats. If a CEO claims a system of action, they need proof. And Wheelhouse went looking for that proof. They conducted their diligence along two completely independent lines of inquiry. Let's start with diligence line 1, the customer evidence.
The first place you should look.
Right, because Optro didn't just make an empty claim. They offered up a primary piece of evidence to back up this massive assertion, and it was a customer self-study written by Reddit.
Yes, and almost immediately upon inspection, the foundation of this evidence starts to crack. Wheelhouse points out two massive, glaring red flags before we even get to the actual data in the study.
Yeah, what's the first red flag?
First, this Reddit case study was published in February 2026.
And you just said the Optro acquisition of Midship closed on May 6?
Correct. So this is a pre-acquisition study.
Oh.
It was published 3 months before Optro even legally owned the Midship technology.
Okay, that's a bit weird, but maybe not a deal breaker. What's the second red flag?
Second, and much more importantly, because it's pre-acquisition, the study is evaluating Midship as a completely standalone product. It is evaluating Midship operating in a vacuum, not as an integrated result generated within Optro's broader platform.
Wait, I want to linger on that because that feels like a massive sleight of hand. They are claiming that their platform, the unified Optro platform, is the industry's first autonomous system for GRC. But their core proof point is a study of a completely different company's software, operating entirely outside of their ecosystem from before they even bought it.
It is a profound disconnect. When an enterprise buyer purchases a platform like Optro, they are buying the integration. They are paying a premium for how the different modules, risk, compliance, audit, AI talk to each other seamlessly.
Right, that's the whole point of a platform.
Exactly. Offering a standalone pre-acquisition case study to prove the efficacy of a newly integrated platform is like a car manufacturer claiming they have built a revolutionary world-class hybrid engine, but their only proof is a positive review of the battery from a year before they even installed it in the car.
Wow.
It proves the battery works in a lab. It does absolutely nothing to prove the engine works together on the highway.
That alone should make any buyer raise a serious eyebrow and maybe, pause the purchase order. But it gets so much wilder because the numbers inside the study, they don't just stay put, they mutate.
They drift significantly.
Wheelhouse tracks what I can only describe as a corporate game of telephone over the span of a few months. I want you, the listener, to really picture this progression because it is an absolute masterclass in how marketing narratives drift away from reality. Let's look at the 5 tellings of this single Reddit study.
It is a fascinating timeline. Let's walk through it step by step.
Okay, telling 1. This is Reddit's original actual blog post from February. They report that by using Midship, they successfully automated 175 controls in 90 days, and it cut their testing time by 60% per control. Simple, straightforward, very impressive efficiency gains.
Yes, objectively, a very solid, credible result for a standalone automation tool in a SOX environment.
Telling 2. Fast forward to May 6. Optro puts out their official PR announcing the Midship acquisition. Suddenly, the Reddit result is reframed. They now claim the technology automates up to 87% of SOX program management.
Notice what just happened to the data there. We went from a highly specific number of controls, 175, and a specific verifiable time reduction of 60%, to a vague umbrella percentage, up to 87%.
Up to is always a fun phrase.
Always doing heavy lifting. And worse, they applied it to an incredibly broad, loosely defined category called SOX program management. That is a massive expansion of scope that obscures the actual achievement.
It sounds much better on a press release, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, telling 3. We are now at May 20. Optro does a private briefing deck for industry analysts. The numbers morph yet again. Now, they say they did 150-plus controls in 90 days. So wait, we've mysteriously lost about 25 controls from the original claim.
It seems so.
But the platform is 70% faster and more efficient, up from the original 60%. And then they introduce a brand new metric out of thin air, 75% control coverage, a number that Wheelhouse explicitly notes Reddit never even mentioned in their original February post.
This is where the narrative becomes entirely untethered from the source material. The vendor is actively injecting their own preferred marketing metrics into the customer's case study to make it fit a broader, predetermined narrative about platform dominance.
It's just wild. Telling 4. We're on the actual verbal briefing call with those analysts a few days later. The speaker from Optro restates the numbers out loud, and they shift again. Now it's over 150 controls in 98 days at about 70% efficiency gain. 98 days? Where did 98 come from? Did they just misremember the 90 days from their own slide?
It is a classic symptom of narrative drift. It sounds like a frantic attempt to sound highly precise on a call with skeptical analysts while actually being entirely inaccurate to the source material.
And finally, we arrive at telling 5, June 22. Optro puts out a press release about opening a new hub in Singapore. They bring back the 87% claim from the first PR, but the denominator changes again. It is no longer 87% of SOX program management. It is now 87% of controls management.
And that right there is the most critical and dangerous shift in the entire timeline.
Why? Isn't program management and controls management basically the same thing? It sounds like corporate synonym bingo.
It sounds like it, but it is vastly different in GRC architecture. Program management refers to administrative workflow. It is the scheduling of audits, the routing of documents, the tracking of who approved what.
Ah, so it's the system of engagement.
Purely the system of engagement. Controls management, however, refers to the actual operational risk layer. It is the testing, enforcement, and remediation of the financial controls themselves.
The actual work.
Yes. By intentionally shifting that denominator in the press release, Optro's marketing team is trying to pull the evidence out of the system of engagement where it actually occurred and forcefully push it into the system of action.
I see. What's fascinating here is how this works psychologically on a buyer. If you are a CISO and you only read that final June 22 press release, you think, wow, 87% of controls management is fully autonomous. They really did build a system of action. I need to buy this.
Exactly.
You have absolutely no idea that this grand claim started as a highly specific, bounded time-saving metric for exactly 175 controls on a completely different platform.
It is the systemic stretching of a bounded outcome.
A bounded outcome.
Yes, meaning the software did a very specific, limited task very well under specific conditions. In this case, Midship was genuinely great at automating the gathering of evidence for 175 specific SOX controls at Reddit. But corporate communications took that single pre-acquisition, bounded case study and stretched it, prodded it, massaged the denominators, and injected new percentages until it sounded like it empirically supported a massive platform-wide architectural claim of full autonomy.
So as an evidence base for a CEO claiming a system of action, how does Wheelhouse grade this Reddit study?
It utterly fails. It collapses under scrutiny. If you are claiming a system of action, your evidence cannot be a pre-acquisition study with numbers that drift aimlessly across 5 different corporate communications. It simply does not carry the empirical weight required to prove to a buyer that the loop is truly closed.
Okay, so the customer numbers don't add up. It's a mess. But let's play devil's advocate here and be as fair as possible. Sometimes marketing gets out over their skis, right?
All the time.
Sometimes the PR teams get overly excited and mess up the math, but the underlying tech itself is still revolutionary. Perhaps the technology speaks for itself. This brings us to diligence line 2, the architectural interrogation. This is where Wheelhouse transitions from reading glossy marketing materials to actually grilling the technical engineers in these briefing calls.
This is where the rubber really meets the road. Analysts like Ori Wellington at Wheelhouse don't just look at the glossy deck you mentioned at the beginning of the show. They demand to look at the architectural diagrams beneath the gloss. They want to see the blueprints.
And Wheelhouse describes a very specific, highly revealing slide from the technical briefing deck. It's titled Optro GRC System of Action. It shows the Optro platform built in layers, like a cake.
Right.
At the bottom, the foundation, you have a unified data core. Above that, a data and analytics layer, then an Optro AI layer, and finally on the top, an applications layer featuring their audit, risk, and compliance solutions. Now, I'm looking at this list and I'm scratching my head. Where is the action? I don't see anything in those layers about acting, remediating, or verifying. It just sounds like a really beefed up system of engagement.
And that is exactly the conclusion Wheelhouse reached. If you take that specific slide and map it against the IRM Navigator model we discussed earlier, it is depicting an enhanced, highly sophisticated system of engagement.
Right.
There is no automated remediation capability shown in the architecture. There is no autonomous incident response capability. There is no closed-loop verification mechanism.
But the slide says system of action.
The literal label system of action is sitting on the slide in bold text, but the actual capability to perform actions is nowhere to be found in the technical diagram beneath it.
So what happens in that room when a seasoned analyst sees a slide like that? I imagine they don't just nod politely and move on to the next slide.
Oh, they don't. They ask the hard question. And this leads to a critical moment in the briefing, which is detailed extensively in the report. Wheelhouse stopped the presentation and directly asked Optro how this specific architecture carries an AI capability through to an actual action taken.
Put them on the spot.
Yes. They essentially asked, if this system detects severe control deficiency, how does it autonomously remediate it? How does it respond to an incident and close the loop without a human clicking a button?
And how did Optro respond? Did the engineers step up with a great technical explanation of their breakthrough?
They deferred the question.
Wait, really?
Yes. The presenters on the call pushed it to a product specialist who was scheduled to join the meeting later.
Ah, the classic pass the buck.
Exactly. And when that specialist finally joined, they described the newly acquired Midship capability strictly within the highly structured confines of SOX compliance testing. They talked about gathering evidence. They never answered the fundamental question about closing the loop, taking autonomous action, or remediating a fault. And then they left the call.
Oh, wow. Okay, we have to unpack this. That is the ultimate moment of truth. You have an industry analyst pointing at a diagram asking, show me the robotic chef actually cooking the meal without human help. And the vendor says, well, let our specialist tell you how incredibly fast we can count the crushed tomatoes in the pantry.
It is a massive, glaring evasion.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, given the direct, explicit opportunity to demonstrate to an analyst firm that their architecture successfully closes the loop, the company surfaced absolutely nothing that did. Now, to Optro's credit, they knew that went poorly, and they did try to save face. The report notes they provided an on-demand confidential product demo of Midship later on June 27th. They tried to prove it under NDA so they could show the real guts of the system. What was the result of that highly secretive demo?
Wheelhouse states that, without breaking confidentiality on the specific UI or code they saw, the demo simply confirmed what their architectural interrogation already suspected. It showed generative AI being applied brilliantly to SOX control testing.
Okay, so it works.
It works for what it is. It showed the system autonomously testing controls, gathering data, and meticulously documenting the results. But it did not show closed-loop action. It did not show the system fixing a problem on its own. It generated a report about the problem.
And this leads us to a vital foundational concept introduced in the report, something Wheelhouse calls the integration trap. I want to spend significant time on this because if you are a buyer, this feels like the absolute key to understanding why so many of these highly touted AI tools feel so underwhelming once you actually deploy them in your company.
I completely agree. The integration trap is perhaps the most brilliant observation in the entire Wheelhouse report. It has to do with the specific architectural locations where vendors choose to integrate AI deeply into their platforms versus where they choose to keep it shallow.
Okay.
In the world of GRC, you generally have two distinct sides of the coin. You have assurance and compliance, which is fundamentally about proving to outside regulators that you followed the rules.
Paperwork, basically.
Exactly. And on the other side, you have performance and resilience, which is about the actual day-to-day operational plumbing of the business and responding to live threats.
Okay, let's make sure that distinction is crystal clear for everyone listening. Assurance and compliance is the paperwork side. It's the audits, the reports, the checkboxes. Performance and resilience is the actual functioning of the business, keeping the servers up, keeping the supply chain moving, preventing a data breach in real time.
Exactly. Now, Wheelhouse notes that Optro integrates its AI capabilities very, very deeply on the assurance and compliance side.
Why there?
Because that is where the administrative compression pressure is highest. That is where human workers are drowning in repetitive, tedious tasks like SOX testing, reading policy documents, and formatting audit reports. AI, specifically generative AI, is fantastic at compressing that text-heavy workload.
Right, it's perfect for that.
But by doing that, Optro is merely strengthening the system of engagement. They're just making the digital waitstaff and the clipboard vastly faster and more articulate.
I see. They fix the paperwork, but they integrate shallowly on the performance and resilience side.
Right, because performance and resilience is where actual operational execution happens. That is where a software decision has immediate, real-world consequences, like shutting down a payment gateway.
Yeah, where things can break.
Exactly. That is where you desperately need the true system of action to remediate a live threat. And that is exactly where Optro's architecture remains shallow. They can write a beautiful report about a failing server, but they cannot reload it.
This is such a critical distinction. So the key takeaway here, and if you are listening to this on your commute or sitting at your desk looking at that vendor deck, this is the concept to sear into your brain. You are getting faster control testing and richer, more detailed evidence, but you are not getting faster action.
Exactly.
The platform sees more than it ever has. It reports better than it ever has, but it cannot act where it couldn't act before.
That is the defining symptom of a system that bridges toward the system of action without ever actually reaching it. It is the literal definition of agentic GRC. It coordinates beautifully, it drafts perfect plans, it executes nothing. It is a fundamental structural architectural ceiling that marketing buzzwords cannot simply wish away.
It's like a shipping company buying an incredibly advanced radar system for their cargo ship. This radar is amazing. It can see storm coming from 1,000 miles away. It can predict the exact wind speed. It can use AI to generate a beautifully formatted multi-page report about the storm for the captain. And it can even suggest 3 different alternate routes.
A fantastic system.
Right. But it can't actually steer the ship out of the way. If the captain isn't standing at the wheel to physically turn the rudder, the ship is still going down.
That is exactly it. And let's be clear, an advanced radar system is incredibly valuable. It saves lives. No one is saying the radar isn't worth buying. Optro's agentic GRC is highly valuable. But if you sell that radar as a fully autonomous navigation system and the captain goes to sleep thinking the ship will steer itself, you are going to have some very angry, very wet customers and a massive lawsuit.
So it's not just Wheelhouse noticing this fundamental disconnect between marketing and architecture. The broader global industry analyst community is structurally separating these concepts. Let's move into how the rest of the market views this, because this wider analyst consensus really validates the Wheelhouse perspective.
It does.
We have a fascinating tale of two quadrants here. Let's start with Gartner, the heavyweight.
Yes, Gartner published their inaugural Magic Quadrant for AI Governance Platforms, or AIGPs, on June 16, 2026. This is a watershed document for the industry because it officially defines what a true AI governance platform actually is and what is required to be considered one.
Okay, so what's their definition?
Gartner explicitly defines AIGPs as runtime enforcement platforms that feature real-time observability and dynamic risk scoring.
I want to linger on runtime enforcement because that sounds like heavy jargon. What does runtime enforcement actually look like in practice for a security engineer?
Think of it as active policing while the system is running live. It is not checking a log file on Friday afternoon to see if a policy was broken on Tuesday.
Okay, it's immediate.
Exactly. Runtime enforcement sits on the API gateways and the model execution layers. If an AI model suddenly starts drifting and generating biased or toxic outputs in a customer chat window, a runtime enforcement platform detects it instantly, intercepts the output before the customer sees it, and actively throttles or shuts down the model in real time. It enforces the policy at the moment of execution.
Okay, that sounds exactly like a true system of action. It's active, not passive.
Exactly. Gartner heavily contrasts these true active AIGPs with traditional GRC tools, which they bluntly dismiss as functioning more like cloud-based spreadsheets.
Ouch. That is a brutal burn for the legacy GRC vendors who charge millions of dollars for their platforms, cloud-based spreadsheets. So if that's the standard, who does Gartner actually name as the leaders in this true AIGP space?
They name enterprise heavyweights like ServiceNow with their AI Control Tower and IBM with watsonx.governance. And the critical defining reason they are leaders is that they offer these as standalone, purpose-built AIGP products. They are engineered from the absolute ground up to govern AI in runtime.
And where is Optro, or their highly praised FairNow integration, on this Gartner Magic Quadrant? Did they make the cut?
They are completely excluded. They are not on the board.
Wow.
Gartner's inclusion criteria strictly require a standalone AIGP offering. Optro's FairNow capability is deeply embedded within a broader traditional GRC tool. In Gartner's eyes, it is essentially an incredibly smart agentic macro running inside a very expensive cloud-based spreadsheet. Therefore, Gartner rules that it does not qualify as an AI governance platform.
Okay, so Gartner looks at Optro's architecture, sees a lack of runtime enforcement, and firmly shuts the door on their autonomous claims. But then, as a buyer, I might look at Forrester, because Forrester released their Q2 2026 Wave report, and they name Optro as a clear leader.
Right, they do.
How do we reconcile that? Is Forrester just easily fooled?
Not at all. You just have to look at what Forrester's actually measuring. Forrester named Optro a leader in GRC platforms, and this is the vital structural distinction buyers must understand.
Okay.
Earning a leader spot in GRC platforms perfectly aligns with Optro's genuine, undeniable strengths in the system of engagement and agentic GRC. They are phenomenal at coordinating workflows, automating testing, and managing compliance documentation. But being a leader in GRC does not validate system of action capabilities. It measures entirely different criteria.
This reminds me of an analogy. Imagine you have a brilliant auto mechanic, the best in the city. They are incredible at hooking your car up to a diagnostic machine, reading all the complex error codes, printing out a detailed multi-page report of exactly what is wrong with your engine, and handing it to you on a silver platter.
Okay, I'm with you.
That's GRC. They diagnose the risk flawlessly. Now imagine that same diagnostic mechanic puts up a massive billboard on the highway saying, "I have built a fully autonomous self-driving car." And then they act shocked when they aren't invited to the International Self-Driving Car Expo.
It is a perfect analogy because diagnosing an engine problem is fundamentally architecturally different from autonomously navigating a physical vehicle through rush hour traffic.
Exactly.
Gartner is running the Self-Driving Car Expo, demanding runtime enforcement. Forrester is rating the diagnostic mechanics, measuring GRC workflows. Optro is trying to take their Forrester Mechanic Trophy and use it to bluff their way into the Gartner Self-Driving Expo.
And the analysts are holding the line. They are enforcing a strict architectural split. Can you explain that split? Wheelhouse defines it really clearly in the report, and I think it's the final piece of the puzzle for buyers trying to navigate this market.
Yes. The IRM Navigator Model defines this two-sided architecture beautifully. On one side of the chasm, you have IRM for AI, This means integrated risk management for artificial intelligence.
Right.
These are the standalone platforms like IBM and ServiceNow that treat AI as an external asset that must be governed. They monitor the AI models in real time to ensure they don't drift, hallucinate, or become biased. They are enforcing hard rules on the AI's behavior.
They are the police officers actively watching the AI to make sure it behaves on the street.
Precisely. Now, on the other side of the chasm, you have AI for IRM. This is using artificial intelligence for integrated risk management.
A subtle but huge difference.
Massive. This is using AI as a tool to improve your own internal processes. This is exactly what Optro is doing. They are embedding agentic AI capabilities inside their existing risk platform to bridge toward action. They are using AI to make the risk management process, the documentation, the SOX testing, the workflows faster and smoother. Optro is strictly AI for IRM. They're entirely on the embedded side of the architecture.
So if a vendor is on the AI for IRM side, if their core strategy is embedding AI to make administrative workflows faster, it is architecturally impossible for them to be a true autonomous system right now.
According to the current analyst consensus and strict architectural definitions, yes. To be fully autonomous, you need runtime enforcement and closed-loop operational action, which currently resides exclusively in the IRM for AI standalone platforms. The embedded tools are agentic GRC. They are the bridge. They are not the destination.
Okay, this brings us perfectly to the final and most important section of our deep dive, the buyer's playbook. We have spent the last hour tearing down marketing claims, tracking shifting metrics, and digging deep into the architectural weeds of enterprise software. So what does this actually mean for you?
Right, the practical application.
If you are the CISO, the compliance officer, or the IT director listening to this, who actually has to sign the multi-million-dollar purchase agreement for these tools, how do you protect yourself? How do you pierce through the neon marketing lights and know what you are actually buying?
Wheelhouse lays out a very concrete, actionable framework for buyers. It is a defense mechanism against hype. These are 3 specific diligence questions you must ask point blank in the room before finalizing any AI software purchase.
Let's hit them. If I'm sitting across from a vendor claiming autonomy, what is question 1?
Question 1. Does the capability close the loop or coordinate toward it?
Simple enough.
When you ask this, do not accept vague, hand-wavy answers about automation, workflow efficiency, or AI insights. Look specifically for automated detection, decision, action, and verification, operating without any human handoff.
What's the best way to prove that?
Ask the vendor to run a live demo where the software finds a problem, deploys a fix to a live environment, and verifies the fix was successful while you and the sales rep are out of the room having a coffee.
Oh, that's bold.
If they refuse, or if the demo ends with a prompt asking a user to click approve, they are coordinating. They are not acting.
I love that test. Show me the fix while I'm out of the room getting a latte. If they sweat, you know it's just agentic GRC. Okay, question 2.
Question 2. Does the customer evidence support the platform claim, or does it describe a bounded outcome?
Ah, the Reddit study lesson.
Exactly. If a vendor's CEO claims their entire integrated platform is an autonomous system of action, do not accept a case study about one specific module saving time on one specific task, like counting SOX controls. Demand post-integration results.
This is a real result.
Demand to see evidence at scale generated within the unified platform they are actually selling you, across multiple named enterprise customers. Make sure the sheer size and scope of the evidence matches the size and scope of the marketing claim.
Right. Don't let them stretch a 175 control pre-acquisition Reddit study into an enterprise-wide autonomy claim. Hold their feet to the fire on the denominator.
Yeah.
And what is question 3?
Question 3. Does the vendor's language hold consistent across all audiences? This is perhaps the most telling, subtle signal of all. If the product engineers in the technical briefing are calling it agentic, but the CEO's glossy blog post is calling it autonomous, that vocabulary shift is a massive red flag.
It's the ultimate signal to scrutinize. When the people who actually built the software use different words than the people who are financially incentivized to sell the software, trust the builders every single time.
Always trust the builders. The product team knows exactly where the architecture stops. They know where the hard coding ends and the human handoff begins. Marketing knows exactly what keywords rank highest on search engines and what buzzwords venture capitalists want to hear. When those 2 languages diverge, the buyer must do the diligence.
So we have the playbook, but let's look ahead for a minute. What would future-proofing look like in this space? Because eventually someone is going to build the robotic chef. What would Optro or any other GRC vendor actually need to do to finally prove this claim, to finally cross that chasm and become a true, verified system of action?
Wheelhouse lists 4 clear, empirically verifiable milestones to watch for. First, they need to demonstrate that true closed loop without human handoff in a live environment. Second, they need to produce their own customer evidence at scale, generated from within their integrated platform, not relying on a pre-acquisition study of a standalone tool.
Okay, that makes sense based on what we've talked about.
Third, they need to show a capability that operationalizes action, rather than just testing and documenting. We need to see autonomous remediation or incident response outside of just the highly structured administrative SOX environment. Value has to fundamentally migrate from assurance and compliance, the paperwork, over into performance and resilience, the plumbing.
And the fourth milestone.
Fourth, they need to align their executive vocabulary with their actual architecture. They face a binary choice. Either the software structurally evolves to become truly autonomous with runtime enforcement, or the marketing team settles down, dials back the hyperbole, and embraces the incredibly valuable, highly profitable reality of selling best-in-class agentic GRC.
Wow. Okay, let's bring this all together. We've gone on quite a journey today. We started with a glossy pitch deck on your desk and ended deep in the architectural weeds of enterprise software, runtime enforcement, and shifting denominators.
It's a lot to process.
It is. To summarize the Wheelhouse findings, Optro has built a fantastic agentic GRC tool. The FairNow integration is real, it adds genuine AI governance to the policy domain, and it saves human teams a ton of time. But their autonomous marketing claims, driven by the CEO, run far, far ahead of their actual architecture.
You're a mile ahead.
The customer evidence from Reddit drifts and morphs, the technical briefings evade the core questions about closed-loop action, and the broader analyst community structurally separates them from true autonomous platforms. The distance between what they coordinate and what they actually execute is exactly where the buyer needs to be exceptionally careful.
It is the gap between the promise and the plumbing. And that gap is where organizations can expose themselves to massive, unforeseen risks if they do not know exactly what they are buying and deploying.
Which brings us to a final, really provocative thought. I want to leave you, the listener, with something to mull over on your drive home, or as you look at that pitch deck. We talked extensively about how hard it is to build a system of action because of the liability involved in letting AI make decisions.
Right.
Well, consider this scenario. If a vendor aggressively sells you an autonomous system of action, and you deploy it believing that marketing claim, what happens when a massive compliance breach occurs because the system merely tested the environment, generated a beautiful report about the problem, but failed to actually take autonomous action to prevent the breach?
Exactly. Who holds the legal liability in that moment?
Right. Does the definition of autonomous suddenly shift from being just a harmless marketing buzzword into a binding legal obligation that the vendor failed to uphold? If they promised autonomy and delivered a bridge, are they on the hook for the breach?
That is the trillion-dollar question in AI governance right now. When the glossy marketing deck becomes Exhibit A in a boardroom lawsuit following a catastrophic breach, the architectural distinction between agentic GRC and a true system of action will matter more than ever.
So tomorrow morning, when you sit back down at your desk and that vendor pitch deck is still sitting there, don't just toss it in the trash. Open it up, find the specific claims, take this framework into your next vendor meeting, look them right in the eye, and demand to see the loop closed. Tell them to show you the fix while you're out getting coffee. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of AI claims. We'll catch you next time.
That wraps up another episode of the Risk Wheelhouse. Thank you for spending time with us at Wheelhouse Advisors today. We hope you found the conversation insightful and actionable for your organization's risk strategies. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. If you're looking for more in-depth analysis and thought leadership on risk technology, be sure to visit the Risk Tech Journal at therisktechjournal.com. It's your go-to source for comprehensive articles, expert interviews, and the latest trends shaping the industry. Subscribe today to stay informed. For any inquiries or feedback, please contact us directly at info@wheelhouseadvisors.com, or feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn and x.com and share your thoughts or suggestions for future topics. Visit wheelhouseadvisors.com for more information and resources. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, navigate wisely.